Good afternoon. So I saw here that Antifa had doxed some people, and I'm going to continue with the message that I started yesterday. If you talk to anyone that has computer hardware experience or programming, or anyone that knows anyone from the NSA that's talked about the different surveillance techniques there are, as well as the intelligence sharing relationship the US government has with Israel, you'll know that we are all already known. Um, when I said earlier that it's going to be strategic who they dox and when, and they're going to have pretext. The fact that they were on Discord and the Discord logs were leaked is not ultimately how they could have done this. How they could have done this is just everyone they have a profile on that visits naughty sites or that they've intercepted emails from. They could dox millions of people, hundreds of thousands, tens of millions of people. And so this is strategic. They're particularly going after white identity groups, people that aren't the whole prison gang mentality, people that are respectable. They're going after Identity Europa, and they went after Nathan D'Amigo hard because he was presentable. I took some time earlier today to watch a YouTube suggested video, former skinheads of Portland, and of course, the guys looked Jewish, oh yeah, I was a skinhead in the 90s. And they did the whole, we were just violent and all that stuff. They're going after effective people. So ultimately, the only way for people to long term fight off Jewish subversion is to develop an in group preference. And that's for all groups. That's natural. All groups are tribal. And they're trying to subvert that in whites more than anyone else, which is probably why they're selectively doxing people now, Identity Europa, etc., because Identity Europa is effective. They recruit people in, they don't bring them into this prison gang violence mentality. They say it's okay to be white, and it's okay for white people to organize, and it's okay to have white advocacy and white identity. So my heart goes out to those guys that have been doxxed, but whether or not they were on a Discord server or not, even if you do like I do, where you have your own Rocket Chat server and stuff, that's just one extra layer that they can get through. They have the ability to get into pretty much any hardware that's internet connected. Um, Look up your Vault 7 stuff. Ultimately, the thing I want to stress here is that when people get doxxed, don't try to find someone to blame for the dox, because ultimately, if the Jews have the ability to dox everyone, and they already know who all of us are, then if some group does the dox, that's selective, and they're trying to cause infighting and stuff. They're probably going to try and find someone to blame for the Discord leak and all that. Ultimately, they could have just leaked it anyway. And as I said before, they could just dox everyone, but there are too many, and that's why they're not doing it. And they also, it's useful for them to say, oh, it was a Discord leak, or the logs were leaked from this, or it was DMs that were shared with the SPLC from Twitter, etc., etc. It's useful for them to say that because when they have to use their back doors, like they used against Red Ice during the Charlottesville thing, like they used against all the journalists that weren't towing the mainstream media narrative in Charlottesville, they showed their power level. They tipped their hand, and ultimately, it doesn't matter whatever they say that the leaked information came from. Ultimately, you need to know that everything on an electronic device is compromised unless you have some super scroll set up and you're printing your own ROM chips and your own CPUs and your own WAN interfaces. There is no way around it. I'm going to now be without video. In the next stream, I'm going to be using Restream.io, and I'm going to be reading Chapter 3 of Hitler's Revolution, because without a knowledge of how the National Socialists fought against Jewish tyranny, and without knowing the true story of what happened to Germany in World War II, we're not going to be able to overcome the current Jewish narratives. We need to dispel the avatar caricatures they have of the Germans that tried to resist Jewish international tyranny. So, just to save on bandwidth, I'm going to turn off this stream and use Restream.io, and I will just be doing audio with a picture instead of video. So, tune back in probably 15 minutes when I do Chapter 3 of Hitler's Revolution.